Hi everyone, my name is Ray and I am the program manager for Bounty and Soul. And I, like so many folks in Bounty and Soul, love to cook, and I especially love to cook with kiddos. So I'm excited to do a little kiddos cooking class for all of you out there who love to bake and love to cook and maybe want to make some fun holiday gifts for folks. Tonight, we are going to make a very easy, healthy granola recipe that you can then make into a gift for a family or a friend. And we're going to go over the ingredients and all the supplies that you need so that you can make it easily at home. And if you have been coming to markets and you're located here in Black Mountain, North Carolina, where Bounty and Soul is based, and you're a family member that comes to markets, you may have gotten a free kid-friendly chopper. You may have gotten a kid-friendly cutting board. And of course, if you are located elsewhere, maybe you didn't come to a market and get those things, totally awesome. You can still use cutting boards at home. If you're a student watching, just make sure that you have a very easy knife to chop with that you can chop with safely, or that you have a family member or adult friend present who can help you with the chopping if you don't have a kid-friendly chopper. All right, so in that case, we're going to get started with our granola recipe. So what are you going to need? What ingredients are you going to need for your granola? Well, we've got some oats. One of my favorite parts of the granola is baking the oats and smelling everything with all the amazing cinnamon and salt and different spices that we use. These are glutinous oats, but if you prefer gluten-free, or your family or friend that you're making this for prefers gluten-free, you can certainly get gluten-free oats now, which I think is pretty cool. All right, so you'll also need some coconut oil. You'll need either some honey or some maple syrup. You'll need some vanilla extract. And then my favorite part, the kinds of dried fruit or nuts that you want to have in your granola, right? So some options are almonds. I also like to sometimes just get trail mix because it's an easy thing to throw in the granola at the end. This one has, oh, you can't really read it, but it has cashews, almonds, walnuts, and cranberries. You can also do raisins. You can do, gosh, what are some other things I love to put in my granola? You can do pieces of dark chocolate if you want to get really decadent with it. It's pretty straightforward in terms of the pantry ingredients that you can put into granola. Lots of dried fruit, lots of dried nuts. I mean, there's of course dried banana chips, there's dried apricots. There's so many different kinds of dried fruits out there. And the other fun thing too is if you want to get real intense with it and dry your own fruit, you can get a dehydrator and do that as well. So for today's recipe, because I love almonds and I love cranberries, that's why I've chosen those. And I'm also going to make this as a gift for a friend. So yeah, I'm excited to dive in. And then in terms of spices, you can do all kinds of spices. I've got today cinnamon and sea salt, but you can also do cardamom. You can do pumpkin pie spice. There's lots of really great options. So maybe experiment when you make this, maybe try the next batch with a different spice or a different seasoning, if you will. So yeah, so in terms of ingredients, that's pretty much it. And then in terms of supplies that you're gonna need, as we mentioned, the wonderful kid-friendly chopper or knife with an adult, a cutting mat board, a spatula, a baking sheet, a medium to large mixing bowl, and a microwavable save small mixing bowl. All right, and of course a spoon to stir that with, and I think that pretty much covers it. So the recipe, we are going to be posting the recipe on the recipe section of our website, bountyandsoul.org, which you'll hear me mention a fair amount because that's where you can find other recipes, other classes, other videos. So definitely check it out, whether you live in Black Mountain or elsewhere. And yeah, the recipe will be posted there, but we'll go through all the steps and all the ingredients and measurements and all of that in today's video. And then of course you can check it out there as well. All right, so let me pull up the recipe on my end. Okay, so what is the first thing that good chefs do, right? What's the first thing if you're a kiddo at home and or if you've done cooking classes, what's the first thing that you want to do before you even go near the cutting board, or you even pick out the ingredients and put them out? What's the first thing you want to do? Wash our hands, right? So I've already washed my hands, but if you haven't at home yet, definitely go wash your hands first. And another thing, if you're making this for family and friends, and just in general, I think it's a good practice. If you have long hair like I do, always a good idea to pull it back and make sure that it's not going to get into the food. The other thing too that you'll want to do is if you touch your hair or touch your clothes, you want to make sure you're still being safe. So wash your hands again, just to make sure you're not spreading germs. So I'm just going to do that really quick since I just touched my hair. And as I'm finishing that up, the next step that we're going to do is we're going to preheat our oven to 275 degrees Fahrenheit. So I've got my oven right here. Ta-da! And I'm going to press bake, and I'm going to turn the temperature down. I've got 270 degrees Fahrenheit. One kitchen tool I forgot to mention is, of course, oven mitts. I love this one because it says, it's kind of hard to read backwards, but a messy kitchen is the sign of a happy home. So definitely have your oven mitts at the ready for when you pull that granola out. All right, so turned on our oven. Next step in our recipe is to pull out that large bowl and combine 2 cups of oats. I'm going to get my measuring cups out here. That's another tool I meant to mention. We're going to do 2 cups of oats. Now, if you're making this as a gift and you want to make a big, big batch, there's some really good ways to quadruple, or even, I don't even know, how would you say 5 times, quintuple? I don't know. But if we're going to do 2 cups and we wanted to make a big, big batch, let's say we were to quadruple the recipe, what is 2 times 4? For those of you at home, it's 8 cups, right? So you want to get lots and lots of oats if you're going to do a big batch for making multiple gifts for multiple friends, or if you just want to have a big batch for yourself. All right, so 2 cups of rolled oats, gluten-free or glutinous. We're going to combine our cinnamon, and I'm going to check the measurement here, a ½ teaspoon, so not a lot. So if you have a teaspoon at home, here's my teaspoon. Another kitchen utensil I meant to mention that we need. So this is where, in terms of the spices that you use, if you're not using cinnamon and you're using pumpkin pie spice instead, probably a similar amount. Cardamom, a little goes a long way, so maybe just a pinch. All right. Now there aren't really ½ teaspoons out there in terms of a type of spoon. So what am I going to do? I'm going to pour about half of the cinnamon into half of the teaspoon. All right. Or I should say, I'm going to pour the cinnamon into half of the teaspoon. So there's my ½ teaspoon of cinnamon. All right. So really, in a lot of baking recipes, including granola, you're going to start with your dry ingredients first, your salt, your cinnamon, your oats, or if you're baking a cake, your flour, your sugar, your salt, and then you're going to combine the wet, what we would call the wet ingredients separately, right? So the honey, the coconut oil, and whisk them together. And then you're going to do what we call folding in, or incorporating, or just adding and integrating the wet ingredients into the dry later. So always a good thing to just, as you bake more and cook more, you just pick this stuff up, and it's always nice to know, like, oh yeah, I'm probably going to start with my dry ingredients separately and then do the wet ingredients later. All right, so next on the dry ingredients front, we've got a ½ teaspoon of sea salt. So got my salt here. Now you can use regular salt, but the nice thing about sea salt is it's really healthy because it's not processed. It's from the sea, hence the name. It's got all kinds of good nutrients that your body needs. So sea salt, always my go-to over table salt or iodized salt because it's just better for you. All right, so ½ teaspoon of sea salt. Okay. And last but certainly not least, if you would like to use almonds, this is a nice time to add the almonds because they can be baked or roasted a little bit longer than, say, the cashews or the peanuts or the walnuts. They can withstand heat a little bit more. So I'm just going to add a few of the almonds to our granola. All right. So next we're going to do the wet ones, right? So we had, remember, 2 cups of oats, a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, a half a teaspoon of salt, and remember any other half a teaspoon of spices that you would, or seasonings that you would like to use. Okay. So remember that microwave safe bowl I mentioned earlier? In that, we're going to put a 1/4 cup of honey. Now you can use maple syrup, you can use agave nectar, anything that I think is not as processed, meaning, you know, more natural, comes from plant-rich materials like honey comes from bees and maple syrup comes from maple trees. I'm sure we're preaching to the choir here, but always nice to do that instead of like corn syrup or that kind of thing. So 1/4 cup of honey, nice and slow. So while that is pouring out, I will just say, be sure to check out on our website, bountyandsoul.org, not only our recipes, which if you have lots of produce and you're not quite sure what to make, a great source of inspiration, but also our classes. We have free, yes, free, yoga classes, Zumba classes, cooking classes like this one, gardening classes. Of course, we have kid-friendly ones. We have ones for the whole family, ones for just you if you want to do your own thing. And the beauty of it is you don't even have to leave the comfort of your own home. You can just watch these really awesome free classes put on by different volunteer facilitators, volunteer gardeners, chefs, Zumba instructors, you name it. And it's a really nice way to make dinner for the week or get the wiggles out after school and do some Zumba. All right, we've got a 1/4 cup of honey and we're putting that into our microwavable safe bowl. And the reason we're, so I don't know if you could see on camera, but I was looking away to grab something and I just poured my honey all over the counter. And that is another thing that chefs do from time to time is make a mess. That'll be fun, right? So future Rachel will thank present Rachel for making such a mess. But I digress. So in putting this in our microwave safe bowl, the reason we're going to do that is because we're actually going to melt down the coconut oil and the honey, or if you're using maple syrup or agave nectar, we're going to melt it down so that it can be incorporated or stirred in a bit more easily than if we were to try to do it and it was still kind of sticky and like not really a liquid, not really a solid, right? It's kind of in the middle there. This will help us turn it into a liquid. Now, let's see. How much coconut oil do we need? Oh, beautiful, a 1/4 cup. Look at that, how easy. So I'm gonna pour, or excuse me, I'm gonna spoon lots of this. Now, the nice thing about coconut oil is it is a little bit healthier for you than an olive oil or a vegetable oil or canola oil. But it is still a healthy fat. So yes, while it is healthy, enjoy in moderation, I like to say. And you know, if fats are something our body needs, but we don't really want to get fat from processed foods once again. So we don't want to really get it from cheese and meat as much. Again, in moderation, those things are great. Like if you like a cheeseburger every once in a while, have a cheeseburger. But if you, like me, want to be sure that you are giving your body exactly what it needs and that it has all the energy that it needs and you don't want to worry about having problems with your health later, enjoy healthy fats and enjoy them in moderation. So coconut oil, avocado, peanut butter, olive oil, those types of foods are really good for your body, but again, in moderation. So, you know, maybe adding a little bit of avocado to a salad instead of having entirely avocado toast, which I'm a total hypocrite. I love avocado toast, but if I have it every morning, probably between the bread and that much fat, not the best choice for me. But if I have it once a week, or if I put that avocado on a salad, or if I put that coconut oil on granola instead of having that cheeseburger again that week, totally your choice for me. All right, so we're adding our 1/4 cup of coconut oil to our microwave safe bowl. We are going to microwave for 20 seconds. All right. So this you might want an adult for. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to microwave it for 20 seconds. All right, while that's microwaving, let's look at our next step. All right. So the next ingredient we're going to want to add is 1 teaspoon, 1 whole teaspoon, not a half, 1 whole teaspoon, into the coconut oil and honey mixture because it's a wet ingredient, right? Perfect timing. Ooh. Love the way that smells. The coconut oil and the honey. It's just, I love coconut. I'm obsessed. So ignore me. All right. So we're gonna get our teaspoon back, and we are gonna do 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Look at that. I have all these nice new cinnamons and vanillas. All right. So satisfying to pour it in. There we go. Okay. So while I'm stirring that to incorporate it, I will tell you another fun fact about what makes this recipe healthy is that this is local honey. This is pure honey clover, or pure clover honey, excuse me, that's made in Asheville. And the nice thing about local honey is that not only are you supporting local farmers and are you supporting you know, the local ecosystem and these farmers doing this amazing thing by keeping bees healthy. But if you're one like me who's prone to lots of allergies in the spring, or maybe you get sick a lot and you just don't feel great, if you eat local honey, what's really cool is the local pollen from the local bees is actually in the local honey. So you can actually build up an immunity if you eat local honey over time to the local pollen. Now, of course, it's not going to be across the board. You might still get a little sniffly, a little stuffed up, but that local honey, amongst many other medicinal properties, if you have it as opposed to store-bought honey that's like made hundreds of miles away, is that your body responds really well over time to having a little bit of that local pollen every day, which I think is pretty cool. And the other thing I wanted to say on that front is that with having that local honey and having that local pollen, you are supporting, again, your neighborhood friendly bee, which I think is awesome. All right, so we've got our wet ingredients combined, and we're gonna go ahead, what was it, a teaspoon of vanilla, a 1/4 cup of coconut oil, and a 1/4 cup of honey. So, oh, just love that smell. All right, so got my dry ingredients, got my wet ingredients, and I'm at this point gonna pour, it's kind of hard to see here, let me tilt this down. Gonna pour that in. And I want to be sure to stir it, my favorite part, getting that all mixed in. So that it's all coated. It's another way to say incorporate or mixed. I want to make sure that coconut oil mixture is coated all over the oats and the almonds. And that you get all that mixed with the cinnamon and the sea salt. Right, so now we are going to spread this out evenly across our baking sheet. So The reason we want to spread it out evenly and not just dump it onto the baking sheet is because we want to make sure that I don't know if you can see that the oats and the nuts and everything else in here gets roasted or baked evenly, right? So we don't have some clumps that are nice and crunchy the way you like your granola, but some clumps that maybe didn't quite get baked all the way through, right? So I'm spreading that out nice and evenly across my baking sheet here. All right. And now my oven is preheated to 275 degrees. Hard to read backwards, but there it is. And you grab my oven mitt just in case. It's not, of course, the pan isn't hot now, but what I like to be mindful of is if I'm putting it into the oven, and this is probably a good time to also grab an adult just to make sure that you're handling things that are hot and being near the oven in a safe way. But sometimes when you're putting the tray in, you could accidentally touch the shelving in the oven that's already hot. And we don't want you to burn your hand or, you know, get injured. So I would grab, kind of hard to see, but my oven has bananas on it. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to pop it into the oven. And we are going to actually bake that for over an hour, right? So I would recommend that if you're making this at home, block off at least an hour and a half, 90-minute window to do everything we just did, and then of course bake it. And then you have time to clean your dishes during, which is another thing that I think good chefs do. Of course, everybody's different. Maybe you have friends over and maybe you want to, you know, make food with them and just hang out and not deal with the dishes. But good chefs always, I think, clean as they go. And the other thing that good chefs do is taste as they go. So when you are baking it, you can pull it out, stir it to make sure that it isn't baked. So pull it out about halfway through, maybe 30 minutes through. So I would always like to set a timer as well. Grab my handy dandy phone and I'm going to set a timer for 30 minutes from now to pull it out and taste it. See if it needs a little bit more cinnamon sprinkled on, see if it needs a little bit more sea salt sprinkled on. Maybe I want to add a few more almonds or a little bit more honey. So lots of fun ways to experiment and see what you want to add, or maybe it's just perfect as is, who knows? All right, so since I won't make you wait for an hour while we hang out, I will just tell you that the last couple of steps of making this granola are to pull it out, like I said, about 5 minutes before you want to finish it up. So, you know, let's say you start at 7 o'clock, you pull it out at 7:55. Then you can add your other nuts and fruits and just kind of bake them a little bit just to kind of get the flavors really coated into the nuts and the fruit. But you don't want to bake the nuts and the fruit with the oats because they'll burn. Learn that the hard way. So definitely just kind of stir that in at the end. And then you can enjoy with oat milk, you can enjoy with coconut milk, you can enjoy with lots of different types of fruit. And that is where our kid-friendly chopper and cutting board comes in. So, of course, for those of you at home who, as I mentioned, may or may not have this, you, of course, want to grab a knife that is just safe to use and pick out in advance. Of course, if you're making this for friends as a gift, you may not want to include the fresh fruit for them because it may not keep. Of course, you know, depends on when you're giving it to them and all that. But for our purposes, just to show you how to chop safely, chop a few different things safely. For my granola, I am going to chop a banana. I love bananas on my granola, and I'm going to chop an apple. Now, the nice thing about the apple is that it is also local, and this is a seasonal apple, meaning that because it's local, it was grown in the fall, and then you can harvest it and keep it all year round. And again, being more friendly to the ecosystem of not having food that's traveled hundreds and hundreds of miles to be on your plate. It's only traveled 25, 30, 50 miles, depending on where it's from. This one's from Hendersonville, North Carolina. And I will say, of course, our banana is not local, but again, everything in moderation, right? Like you can enjoy raspberries in the winter once in a blue moon, or again, you can enjoy them however much you want, but I like to try to eat locally and organically as much as possible because I feel really great about supporting a local farm. I feel great about having the food, having traveled less and having less gas miles behind it. And it also just tastes better. It's just so flavorful and rich and just tasty because it's so fresh. It doesn't have to sit on a car or a cargo ship or a plane and lose that peak freshness that it gets if it's only traveling a little bit. So what's the first thing we do when we have some types of produce, but especially ones where we're going to be eating the skin? Wash it, right? So I'm going to wash my apple. And the beauty of these wonderful choppers that were provided to us by a very generous funder is that you can kind of chop anything safely and very easily because it's got such a nice handle here. Now, the only thing about these is that they are really great for things like apples, where it's a clean cut. But for things like tomatoes, I don't get me wrong, it's super fun. But if you're gonna go, bam, the tomato's gonna go everywhere. So I like to just kind of do almost like a dolphin wave or something with the kid-friendly chopper. Just kind of chop into it and then wave back out. It's a much easier way to deal with it than that's the technical term. Okay, so I'm going to chop my apple, and as with a lot of stone fruits, excuse me. Well, this isn't a stone fruit. The peach is a stone fruit, but it does have a core, right? It has a middle. So I'm not going to chop right down the stem, but I do want to avoid that core. So I'm going to chop around the core, right? So for those of you that can see me, I already smell the cinnamon and the salt. That's my favorite part of baking, is when everything starts to smell really good. All right, so I'm going to chop my apple to the right of the core here. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to, come out perfectly because it's not a super clean knife, but at the same time, it does the job. It's going to be great. And then I'm going to cut around the stem, if you can see, again. And now, since I know where that stem is, I'm going to really be mindful to chop around that core. I've got all of my apple, and I've got my core left. It's really fun looking, isn't it? And what can I do with this? Instead of throwing it in the garbage, I can compost it, right? And some of you might be wondering, what is compost? As much as I wish I could ask you, you could tell me in real time here. This is a pre-recorded video. If you know what compost is, you're amazing. If you don't know what compost is, you're still amazing. So compost is a way in which we can get rid of our fruit and vegetable scraps and other plant-based scraps, coffee grounds. Some people will do grains are okay. Pretty much anything that isn't meat and dairy, anything that has come from directly from a plant-based ecosystem, if you will, or from a plant, can be composted. So compost is those fruit scraps those plant scraps that sit with leaves and soil and other things, and you put them in a pile and you turn them to provide them some air. And if you live in a dry climate, you water them, or you can just let the rain do its job. And that's kind of the compost recipe, right? Is fruit and veggie scraps, leaves, soil, water, air, right? Because air helps everything break down. It helps it decompose, and it turns it into food for future food, which I think is amazing. Blows my mind that we can actually use our food to provide nutrients, to provide nutrition the way food does for our bodies, and we can put it back into the soil and grow more food instead of letting it sit in the dumpster or in the landfill. Amazing. So I at home, and of course, this also depends on if you have a yard, if you have a place to have your compost pile sit. Fortunately, I have heard that some cities are now starting citywide composting. So they'll literally pick up your compost for you. They actually did that when I lived in Washington, D.C. It was awesome. And they will give it to a farm, or they will give it to a local garden, a community garden, to use as food for their soil and, again, for their food. So I like to keep a nice compost container indoors. that is stainless steel, that has a nice cloth bottom, and it helps keep the smells and the bugs to a minimum. I will say in hotter weather, you want to take your compost out of this and into the pile in the backyard or to that composting service location every couple of days, because it can get a little buggy even when something is, well sealed as this. But of course, you can also use a Tupperware. Some people will even freeze their compost, which I think is awesome. I have done that before, and I will freeze it and take it to my community garden once a week. So another fun tip. So apple core goes in the compost. Oh, I love that smell. And I'm gonna chop my apple to be what we call diced, just big enough so that I can enjoy it in my granola. So, and again, using that chopper left to right, like a little dolphin wave. I think of what other things make fun waves. Curious what you all at home would like to say. Is it like a dragon tail? Is it like a Harry Potter wand? Who knows? All right. Now, I won't go through the banana, but again, very simple. Peel can also go where? In the compost. And you can chop little slices of banana. What are some other fruits you could do? I'd be curious to hear on our Facebook page or Instagram page if you watch this recipe and you want to, or video, excuse me, and you want to share your favorite fruits that you like to put on your granola, what you like. I love blueberries. I love raspberries. Sometimes I'll even put peanut butter in it if I, like I said, have had a more moderate week and want some healthy fat. I will put kiwi, all kinds of good stuff. So I've got fresh apple if I want to eat this at home for breakfast. Or again, if I am making this granola for a friend, just have a little apple as a snack. So to finish up, as I mentioned, because I'm not going to make you wait for the whole hour for this to bake. Again, you'll pull this out after 55 minutes, add whatever fruits and nuts that you would like to have in your granola for your friend or for yourself or for your family member. Bake it for a couple more minutes, take it out with an oven mitt, and of course, if you're 5th grade or below, with a family member, let it cool for about 10 minutes. Stir it up again just to make sure everything's incorporated, everything's really nice together, and then you can store it in a Tupperware, or a glass jar, and give it as a friend, or give it to a friend, or keep it. And make sure to clean up very thoughtfully if you're in your family's kitchen. They always appreciate a clean kitchen. And I think that pretty much does it. So again, please, hope you enjoyed making your granola. Hope you enjoyed watching our class. And again, please check out our website, bountyandsoul.org, for different recipes on the recipes tab, or in our education tab for those cooking classes, for those movement classes, gardening classes, and all kinds of fun stuff. So hope you enjoy your tasty treat, and please connect with us on the Bounty and Soul Facebook page or Instagram to share your recipes and share what you enjoyed about it. All right, see you next time.